Hi, my name's Lindy and welcome to my channel. The website is www.lindycowling.co.uk. The email for business, for sessions or for media inquiries is info@lindycowling.co.uk. And the title of this hot sunny evenings video, that's hot and sunny in the UK, and hopefully you can't hear the fan too loudly blowing on me that's next to me. The title of the video is The Originator Points, in brackets, to rewrite consciousness. The originator point to rewrite consciousness. So what is an originator point, which I've mentioned many times on this channel before, and it is a terminology, or my term if you like. What is it? Why is it vital to our ascension? Why is it vital to our well-being? Why is it vital on all levels, and why does it rewrite consciousness? When I've explained what the originator points is before, I've explained it on videos like, for example, how to heal or uncover or discover core soul wounds within you. There are other videos I've mentioned it on, because I've made so many videos and I don't tend to plan them hardly ever. They're spontaneous. I can't quite remember which ones they were on, but they'll all be around that same period of time that core soul wound video was brought out. There was another video on timelinings, actualizing and embodying your highest timeline. I believe I was talking about originator points on there, and I may well have mentioned it on any video I brought out on inner child healing and consciousness. What is an originator point? My explanation and my language and the way I term it as an originator point is a point that we can track to, or track in some ways back to, an event or a trigger or a trip switch on us as consciousness that then is replicated over and over again, or causes us to experience certain events or certain scenarios over and over again, according to what that originator point is. So in terms of, let me explain it simply, in terms of a core soul wound, if your core soul wound is shame, or you think it's shame, and if you track it back, you might find it's not shame, there's something underneath it, and shame is one level. But let's, for simplicity, because I often use the example of abandonment as a core soul wound, let's use shame as a core soul wound. The originator point there, you would track back by using such a thing, such as the technique I used on that video. You might have another way of doing it, but that's just a way of doing it on there. The core soul wound that you felt was shame, maybe underneath that wasn't shame, or there was something interrelated with it that brought about the feeling of shame. And the shame might be playing out in your present day life by you replicating a scenario that keeps giving you shame, or keeps making you feel shame, or you're constantly confronted with representations of shame. So if you're trying to track it back to an originator point, you would track it back to where you first felt shame and where it first began. And lots of people often think it's in their first primary relationship. And often, obviously, our first primary relationship might be with a primary care giver, like parents or mother or father or someone that took care of us. It's not always where it evolves from, but very often it is. So if you tracked it back in an exercise to there to see what the originator point is, you might say to me, well, I can't remember when I was very young, so how would I know if my originator point to what I feel is shame, if this is underneath it, the originator point? What if I can't remember when I was, younger than 4 or younger than 3? You don't always have to actually physically remember it. You can get a gut feeling or an intuition or an aha moment or a realization moment in your energy field by tracking back, even if you can't remember it, let's say consciously, energetically and epigenetically and genetically. There will be, on a cellular basis, a cellular memory, and in consciousness, the consciousness that you are will know. You can track back to where the originator point kicked off, and even if you can't remember the circumstances that it kicked off with, in some ways you don't have to. You can find that originator point. Now, that originator point in this example, in a core soul wound, might have a particular word with it. So, using the example of shame, someone who thinks it's shame all the way through may find that there's something else underneath it. And it was something else like rejection, not being accepted, or some kind of self-worth message they were getting that then they translated later in life to shame. So the originator point wouldn't be the shame, but it would be the message underneath that. And if they can't remember when that kicked off, but their gut feeling, their intuition, their actualization, their realization, all the signs in them is telling them, aha, this is around this period of time. An exercise you can use is what color are you seeing with that? What word is underneath what you feel is your theme, your life theme or long-term theme of shame? What word is underneath that? What colour is underneath that? Does a memory come up with that? Ways of bringing it to the surface would be just to recognise it, but if it comes with a particular colour, let's say blue off the top of my head, you can change the colour of the originator point to provide relief and release, because that changes the consciousness or the stuck consciousness or the repeated consciousness. It shifts the energetic component of it, and this is only one way of doing it. This is a consciousness way of doing it, if you like. There are other ways you can do this with sounds, with shapes. There are various ways that you can do it, but for the purposes of this video I'm explaining this way. And so this would be an originator point where you've tracked where it was, and now this is the healing bit on it, or what I'm talking about now, or the releasing of it. Because it's almost pointless if you track back where it was or is, or where it started, but then it's just left to continue. If you've taken the time and energy, or you feel driven within yourself, or you feel ready to do that. And again, every single person watching this video is different, and some of these things you can do easily and feel strong enough and confident enough and balanced enough to do on your own. There are some people watching this that would be far too challenging a scenario to do on their own. And of course, if you recognize that in yourself, then you go into a therapeutic setting that would help you with that. Now, you're probably 9 times out of 10 going to walk into a setting that would not know what I'm talking about here, or the techniques for it, but they would certainly be able to help you with different levels of it if you recognized a theme, your originating theme that had played out at different points in your life. Or they would be able to help you with some levels of it. So, for example, if trauma were tied up in this, you could go to a trauma specialist or a cognitive behavioural therapist that specialises in trauma, a psychotherapist that specialises in trauma, a trauma therapist. You see where I'm going with this. So there are different levels, and other people watching this won't need any of that specialist help or support with it, because it won't be so deeply entrenched, and it wouldn't have been a long-term pattern that hasn't been freed up or released, or that you're continuing to feed. So in the example of shame, someone continuing to feed shame and not meaning consciously not intentionally doing that, but subconsciously or energetically, would keep creating scenarios subconsciously that kept creating the theme of shame over and over again, till they release the trip switch or the originator point that keeps that replaying over and over and over again. So this is an easy way of describing it. This is in terms of a course soul wound. So why is it so vital to understand that there are originating points in our life experience, originating points in our memory, originating points in our consciousness that we're not even aware of? Why is it so vital to recognize that such things exist, but not only that they exist, but that we can actually alter our present circumstances or reality, or alter our present consciousness within our present circumstances and reality to enable us to be empowered in the present, as the present is exactly almost what I'm saying and answering here, is one cannot remain in the present moment in one's embodiment and mastery and in one's authenticity, fully conscious, if one is constantly being yanked, pulled, distracted and derailed by one's own disruptive originating points that are largely unconscious. Because in order to ascend and in order to come into your mastery and your authentic heart, in order to come into your wisdom and in order to come into your power, it's all connected with you as the consciousness you are. So anything unconscious within you that is running your show, let's say detrimentally, or running it not to your ultimate power or your highest outcome, because the subconscious subliminal messaging, the subconscious subliminal programming within you and belief systems within you and originating points within you, which is all entwined with what I'm saying, are constantly dictating what railway track you are on, if you are going this way or if you are going off onto the buffers or if you are going in a completely different direction. The whole purpose of this channel from day one, although I didn't realise it till 2 years in because of my own evolutionary journey, the whole purpose of it is a template to demonstrate by doing it myself, but also to help you, a template in order to help people get into their full consciousness, who they truly are, minus all the unconscious matter, material, old energy and programming, in order for you to stand in your mastery. Not only as a visual and auditory demonstration of this by me doing it step by step, literally living it. So it's been very slow for me because it literally is a living, working, moving template blueprint, this channel. But in order so that some of you can imprint in your consciousness at different levels on the template of consciousness that I am providing to kind of, for me to act as a catalyst to help you along, if that makes sense. So the originator point is everything. So I gave you an example there of core soul wound, originator point. Let's give you another example. So that's a big one because most of them, we can translate core soul wound differently as well. And we can say, we can call core soul wound a pattern of consciousness or a pattern of life experience that you repeatedly repeat, something that drives you to distraction, something that derails you, and that you're not just repeatedly repeating now, but you've repeated it before, or you are repeating it now in other timelines, other realities, what you would call other lives. Other people would say, Lindy, surely you're describing karma, and it's a karmic thing where you're repeating it over and over again. Really, I think what I'm saying here is I'm rewriting the whole idea of karma. Karma is not an expression I use. I don't really align with that explanation of it, but for me, what I'm describing, some people might call that karma, but really it's repeating consciousness over and over again till one plays out a particular theme to its end in all times, all realities, all dimensions, all timelines, until one gets the message or decides enough is enough and they want to evolve beyond that particular experience or beyond that particular consciousness or beyond that particular message and become, help the unconscious within them to become conscious. So other people might call that karma. So I've given an example of the originator points in the core soul wound, or the repeating pattern that you keep repeating. Maybe it's in this life, maybe it's in multiple lives, multiple realities. And only you can decide if you like the repeating scenario, or if your awareness is enough that you want to change that repeating scenario, or even take the first step in realizing that you have a choice in altering a repeating scenario. So let me give you another example of an originating point. Now, this is an area that I'm really excited about because I mentioned on the last video that I was working on, I really am going to be focusing on an area that really aligns with what is happening within me. Like I say, it's an experiential channel, which means everything I'm sharing is personal and professional. So I'm not getting the information out of books and quoting it. I'm doing it the long, slow way round by doing it experientially myself. What I am really aligning with and have huge, vast quantities of input on, which is expanding all the time, is human consciousness. And I already know the book that I am supposed to be getting on with writing, and I'm almost telling myself off here to get on with it because I know the title of it and I know vaguely the framework of it, and that's all I do know. So it will be largely channeled from my higher self and from my heart, and I have no worries about writing it. I've just got to get on, be disciplined and get down to it. So that is that for me, people becoming fully conscious, let's say, I feel is everything in our human reality, and that's how people walk their mastery and stand in their power and get the highest outcomes for them and for this planet and for their reality, for humanity, is for them to become conscious. So in other words, that's what drives me. That is the format of this channel, and everything that I'm demonstrating on this channel has been stepping stones towards that. And yes, my big entry point to becoming fully unified, coming into inner union, coming into the heart and starting to go up the rungs of consciousness in the heart, was via twin flame union. Other people will do it via other routes. That is not the only route to become conscious, not by any shot, but that was mine, and that has been my entry point for the last, well, since 2010, so 8 years really, that I've been coming through that and helping other people at different points in their journey to inner union, because you won't have your outer union without your inner unified state. You won't have a conscious connection with anyone if you are not conscious yourself. You won't have matching consciousness if you are not at a point, well, I say, let it word it this way. You will have matching consciousness, matching the point that you're at. So if you are shooting for gold, then you have to be gold yourself. If you're shooting for silver, you have to be silver yourself. If you're shooting for bronze, you have to be bronze yourself, and so on and so forth. So this is an area I'm passionate about. This was an area that I have almost, in a way, I would say unlimited. I could talk about it for hours because I have a constant stream of information, you know, on that side of things, and that's what I'm passionate about, and I need to get on and write the book. I'm telling myself off now, and I will be doing that this summer, and it will be, I'm not going to give any more away, but I will tell you when it's done, and we'll go from there. So the originator point, let me give you another example of it, so I don't want this video to be too long. So the originator points, let's give it from a different angle. So you could do an originator point of a particular illness or a particular mindset or a particular change in someone's personality or a particular change in their health or a particular trigger or change that changed everything in their well-being from then on. So let me track it back. Let's use a simple one again. So an originator point to someone whose health was okay or even very good, and then, excuse me, I'm just getting that fan on me a bit more, so the sun's really getting on me now. Originator point where their health was okay or pretty good, and then totally derailed very quickly, and then had never been the same again, you know, for like 20 years or indefinitely, you know, just was never the same again. Now, you could say, well, that's just bad luck, or it was a combination of things, depending if you want to look at it from a linear trajectory, if you want to look at it from an energy trajectory, and I'm guessing if you're watching this channel, you're coming at it from an energy trajectory. Like myself, I always look at it from all levels. I don't just look at it from the energy trajectory, I look at all levels, because you cannot have the energy without the physical, and you cannot have the physical without the energy if you want to bring this down into anchored embodiment in this reality. You would, in that case, let's do it on the health case, track back to what emotional thoughts, feelings, patterns and behaviours were happening within you at that time, and track it back to what was happening around you in your life at that time. What was the predominant theme again to do with, it might not have had anything to do with your health, but just how it was affecting you emotionally and energetically. What was going on? Look, let me make it simple again. Let's simplify it. A man, no back issues, nothing to do with his back, anything at all, fit and healthy, then in his 30s or maybe 40s, something like that. Big life changes around him, his wife leaves him, he loses his job in the same month, so all his stability is gone, all his security is gone, his life is turned upside down. He tries to soldier on and suck it up and be brave, and he represses a lot of the way he feels, which is absolutely devastated, and he feels that all his security and support system has gone, and so the support of his own body plays out that emotional feeling. So the originator points underneath his back suddenly going, and then his back never being right for, say, not just for a few weeks or a few months while this was going on, or even a few years, but that he's constantly then refers to himself as having a bad back, and he always has got a bad back. You look at the originator point there of him losing his security, losing his stability, losing his support network. As the originator point, you do it again. Okay, what emotions were going on at that time? What physical circumstances were happening at that time? What colour would you give those emotions? What colour would you give those feelings? You might give them a shape. You might give them a number or something like that. Again, recognising where it was, and then saying, is this the originator point, or did I feel like this earlier in my life? This is the catch-22, because sometimes people will only go and think, well, there was the injury, that's the originator point. 9 times out of 10 the originator point isn't there, and there was already wobbly foundations, shall we say, before that kicked off then. So the originator point may be before his back went, many years before, like 10 years before, 15 years before. You ask you as the consciousness, where did it begin, where did it start? And then you might be shocked at, whoa, it took me back to when I was age 15. You know, they might be saying this, it took me back to when I was age 15 and I was being, this man saying, I was being bullied at school, somebody pushed me off my bike, I really hurt myself, I felt like I was on my own against the world. My dad and mum really worked lots of hours and I couldn't really go to them. And being a boy at school, I had to sort of suck it up and just be brave, really. Look, the same theme again, suck it up, be brave, a soldier on, not feeling supported, no one to turn to. And you see that it's the originator point was at age 15 and he can test it for himself. Is this right? Is this where it started? Or do you need to go back earlier? It's recognizing the originator point in consciousness to make the unconscious conscious and to change the consciousness, because the consciousness, let's say, it doesn't really remain dormant. We still imprint on it continuously until the consciousness has changed. So it's changing the colour of the consciousness, the vibration of the consciousness, recognising the consciousness in order to free the consciousness, all happening within you. And you can do it by shapes, colour, sounds, recognising, tracking back. So in the terms of this guy, and his originator point being age 15, he tests it. And you, if you're an energy worker working with him, you can test it. But if he's doing it, he can test it. Was this the main time? And, you know, he might be shocked to think, crikey, I just thought it was when I was in my late 30s or 40s and this happened. Didn't even think it was that. Once the underlying theme or the underlying consciousness is changed and shifted, you have then altered the originator point. You've then identified the originator point. And then the system, you as a consciousness, you as the being, you as the human being, does not then keep imprinting on that originator point over and over again. Because if you don't recognise the originator point within you, what would happen is that would keep coming up again. So say his wife walks out and then he loses his job, and then another 10 or 20 years go by, and there's a familiar theme playing out all the time of him never really being around people that support him, never being in circumstances that are really supportive, and him keep playing out that same circuitry of the originator point until he realizes he has a conscious choice in this particular theme, that it's not just his karma or his destiny to forevermore have a bad back and have no support in this life, that he can actually rewrite his own consciousness because he would have got the message and alleviated, shifted, made the unconscious within conscious, so that he can make conscious, co-creative decisions in his own life as to how he would like to experience life that he is, or the interplay of life and the dance of consciousness that he is, one and the same within him. Now you could say to me, just before I sign off from this video, you could try and throw into the equation here, well, what if it was just his destiny that he was always going to experience a scenario where this kind of thing happened over and over again? Really, I would say to you, it all depends on your perception here of how I can answer that for you, because you can get someone that has a sequence of what we would call challenging or devastating events that will flatten them for life, and they are never able to really bounce back from that and are in a way inwardly broken. And some of that inwardly brokenness is to do with the challenges of their life, but also a lot to do with their perception of the challenges of their life. Or you could get someone else with the exact same criteria and circumstances, that because their perception is different, I could say they have a more conscious perception, that the gifts that come with it and the learning that comes with it and the knowing that comes with it and the opportunities that come with it and their perception makes their journey far less challenging, in a way far less suffering, and their interpretation of suffering is different, and their outcome and reality is much more beneficial for them. So you could get 10 people with this scenario, and all of the 10 will be slightly different depending on their rate of consciousness and their perception of it. Doesn't mean to say one is better than the other, they're just all slightly different depending on where they're at in their evolution. But the bottom line is here, even if you have a belief system that we come in with a particular blueprint, and whatever we do and whatever we try to do, we cannot deviate from that blueprint. So if that's your belief system, that I come in at A and I have to get to D, and so I will go from B to C, and even if I try not to go to B or try not to go to C, or I go left or I go right, I'm still going to end up at D. And there are aspects of that that I truly feel, in other words, almost the predestined day that you arrive as consciousness to experience human life, and the day that you leave as consciousness having experienced human life. But I do feel, and I've always felt, there are variations in between. So if you go from A to D, there are a number of things you can do between A to D. You can go this way, you can go this way, you can go this way, you can take much longer to get there, or much quicker to get there, or more straightforward to get to D, or more complicated to get to D. You can run around the houses and all over the show before you go to D, and like a river, you can go bubbling that way, you can go this way, you can carve it out. There's a number of variations here. And how you experience between A and D is all going to depend on you as consciousness, how conscious you are, how much you create within your reality, because the more conscious that you are, the more you can create your reality and, let's say, not only play with the course of the river, but perhaps alter the course of your river of consciousness, your flow of consciousness. And how much enjoyment and gifts and realization you get between A to D is all going to depend on the sort of stuff I'm talking about. And one of the key things that affects our experience and how much trauma, drama and suffering we have in it, whatever we are dealt as life experience, how we transform and alchemize and shift and change and come through it will depend on what we can make conscious within us. Because otherwise it's the unconscious or the subconscious that is dictating large chunks of humanity's experience. And you will think that you are making the choices from free will, and they will not be your free will at all. They will be a programmed reality. So identifying your originator trigger points, whether it is illness, whether it is a life pattern, whether it's relationship patterns, whether it's the same themes over and over again, is a vital part of this puzzle. Because even if you don't know all the details of it, if you can get to understanding and accepting where it first triggered and first began, even if you don't know all the nuts and bolts of it and the details of it, it will be enough to shift your perception, shift your reality, and ultimately facilitate you to becoming your conscious, authentic mastery, conducting your reality from your greatest outcome in terms of everything, from your authentic, conscious, quantum heart. And on that note, I will love you and leave you. As always, thank you for watching this channel. Thank you for subscribing to this channel and supporting me as the channel. Thank you to those individuals that have made donations. I won't mention your name because of confidentiality, obviously, but it is greatly appreciated. Thank you very much for that. Thank you for everybody that supports me as that channel in the ways that you do, whether it's subscribing, watching it, donating financially, or booking sessions. Whatever way you support this channel, I would not be here as that channel if it weren't for you guys. On that note, I will love you and leave you. As always, thanks for watching. Look after yourselves. See you again soon. And I hope this video helps. Bye.